Hey film fans, you're watching Craig's Film Reviews. This week we're going to be talking about Thor Ragnarok. So, Thor Ragnarok was directed by Taika Waititi. He made a bit of a splash the last couple of years directing the vampire comedy What We Do in the Shadows and the adventure comedy Hunt for the Wilder People with Sam Neill. So Thor Ragnarok tells the story of Thor. He picks up from Avengers Age of Ultron. Again, Thor's played by Chris Hemsworth. He returns to his home of Asgard and finds it in kind of disarray. It's been taken over by Loki, which was the end of the last Thor film, Thor the Dark World, where Loki had taken over the body of their father Odin, played by Anthony Hopkins. So Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston's, kind of let the whole realm go into ruin, and there's a new villain on the rise called Hela, played by Cate Blanchett, and it turns out that Hela is actually the two brothers' older sister that they never knew about, long lost older sister, and she's pissed. She's got some vendetta against Asgard and the family, and she wants revenge. After their first encounter with Hela, Thor and Loki are banished to a planet run by the Grand Master, played by Jeff Goldblum. On this planet, he kind of rules to his own amusement. The Grand Master is like an immortal being that rules to his own amusement, and the main thing they do there is pit famous warriors against each other. And here Thor meets his old friend, his old colleague in the Avengers, Hulk, played by Mark Ruffalo, using mocap technology mainly for this one. And together they all team up, along with Tessa Thompson's character Valkyrie, who's another former Asgardian banished. They form together to form a team to go back and recapture Asgard from the clutches of Hela. So yeah, I mean, quite an action-packed storyline there. There was a lot of high hopes for this one. Taika Waititi, he's an interesting guy, an interesting filmmaker. Started off as a kind of comic actor. He made appearances in a lot of New Zealand comedy. And again, Flight of the Conchords he's been popped up in, and he appears in all his own movies. He's kind of had a rep in the last few years of making his very kind of deadpan takes on genres. So What We Do in the Shadows is a mockumentary about vampires set in the modern age in modern New Zealand, and while it also deals with most of the common tropes of the genre, like vampire hunters and drinking blood, it also deals with more mundane things like arguing over who's going to do the dishes and who's going to pay the rent. So it's a very kind of deadpan, almost improvisation. Well, I think most of his style is improvisational comedy. And Hunt for the Wilder People is a bit more of a more linear storyline, starring Sam Neill as a kind of grumpy foster parent who's kind of stuck with his foster son, and they go off on an adventure through the woods while they're being chased by the authorities. It's a very funny film, very heartwarming film as well, and it's filmed in a very Waititi does know the style, how to film in a kind of epic style, and that must have and kind of spoofed the action genre kind of sequences that spoof the kind of conventions of an action film. So I'm sure Marvel saw that and thought, this is the guy that we can get this guy in to breathe a bit of new life into the Thor franchise. So yeah, there was a lot of high hopes for that he would bring his kind of deadpan humour, and that's in there. The film's definitely got that kind of... Marvel in the last few years they kind of hit on their formula, and it's more of a comedic style than, say, what the DC universe is trying to do with a more kind of gritty style to the superhero genre. They're really pushing this kind of comic book aesthetic, and Thor Ragnarok does have that comic style. The main criticism of the Marvel films, and I do agree with this, I think, I do like the Marvel movies. They're very entertaining, they're very funny, but I find often that they just the main criticism is that they're playing it safe. I don't know if that's quite the right way to put it, but they've got their formula and they stick with it. And the formula seems to be make it very funny, put a bit of action in it, but they never really move the story along. There's no real drama to the movies. And that's what I think was so great about the first Thor film. I really love Ken Branagh. Ken Branagh directed the first film as an actor himself, and I think he got some great performances. I mean, he kind of made Tom Hiddleston the star that he is today. No one really had seen him before in much in the film world, and also Chris Hemsworth, who really got a great performance out of him. And but I think the main thing with that Thor film, that the first Thor film that Branagh did, Branagh's comes from the world of Shakespeare, and he managed to take these worlds, Thor is all about like gods and mythology, and he took these kind of old-fashioned ideas and he made them human. He knows how to make them give an emotional storytelling to the film, and I think that's what he did with the first Thor film. Thor actually has to learn lessons. He actually has to change and learn that he's not just his hammer, he's not just his power, he's not automatically going to be given power just because of his right. He has to earn it, and I think that comes across really well in that film, and it gives that film its heart. And in the last couple of all Marvel movies, I think, start off quite well, and then as the franchises seem to go on, the series seem to go on, it becomes more and more just lulls. Do you know what I mean? Just joking around, just everyone gets on with each other. It's all for laughs, and I think that's the problem with this one. Loki in the first few films was quite a menacing character. You could never trust him, and Hiddleston played him with quite a lot of shades. He was a bad guy, but there was this kind of redeeming quality to him. We could understand where he came from. He was a more human villain, but he was a villain, and now he's just a joke. He's just he's cracking wise alongside Thor, and he's helping him and fighting the bad guys. But it's all, I don't know. It all just seems a bit of a laugh, and there's no real consequences to any of it. Same with Thor's story this time. I don't think he's got much going on. There's not much of a storyline for him. There's kind of a bit of stuff where he needs to learn about being a hero again, but he's kind of learned that in the other films, so I don't really see what they're going for in this one. And they make this lot of thing that he loses his hammer, so he's like, oh, I've lost my hammer, I'm not a hero without my hammer. But then wasn't that the whole point of the first film, that he also lost his hammer in that one? And he's not just the power of the Mjolnir. I mean, there's no real depth to this film at all. And you might say, well, it's just a comic book movie, it doesn't need to have depth. But I think the original Marvel series, with Iron Man and the Captain America, the First Avenger, there was a little bit going on underneath. There was a little bit of effort towards the storytelling and pushing these characters along. And I think that's kind of missing now in the Marvel genre, in the Marvel franchise. So that's kind of what I didn't really like about it, that there's a bit of a lack of depth, a lack of consequence to it. It's, I mean, Cate Blanchett's very fun and campy. She has a whale of a time, and I quite enjoyed her performance as the villain. But again, we don't really get what she's about. There's not much impact to the fact that she's their older sister. There's not much dynamics or tension between them. She's just another villain for them to fight that they overcome pretty easily. Spoiler alert, I suppose, but yeah, you're not going to expect many twists and turns that way. And it's all just a bit like the beginning. I found it quite frustrating in terms of the storytelling. It sort of just leapt about a bit, and it was just from one moment to another. Doctor Strange shows up for not much reason at all. I found the storytelling was quite lax, quite uninvolving, undramatic. There wasn't a lot going on underneath. It wasn't a very exciting film. But I suppose let's go. I've been a bit negative on it, so let's have a look at some of the good things about it. Waititi's a very funny film director who really knows how to get comic performances, and it's a bit of a revelation to see Chris Hemsworth really they've changed the character of Thor. Now he is really just like a lunk, and he plays it in a more comedic way, almost kind of akin to almost like an action movie hero spoof, and it works quite well. It's quite Hemsworth's quite game for that, and that's probably one of the positives of the film, that how funny it is. Jeff Goldblum, it's maximum Goldblum-ness, if that is a word. That he plays the Grandmaster who rules the planet, and everything's there just kind of for his amusement. He's like this immortal being who's kind of got bored with life. And he's very funny. He's very Jeff Goldblum. That's all you can say. He just plays Jeff Goldblum, which is a nice thing to see. It's fun to see him. He's a very unique screen presence, isn't he? And but again, you miss the days back when he was good. I mean, when he was in The Fly, he actually gets to act, and he's a terrific dramatic actor. But nowadays, he kind of is brought into this kind of idea of Jeff Goldblum as as a comedic actor, just as a joke. But he's fun. He's very entertaining. Gets most of the best lines in this movie. Waititi himself plays a rock monster who helps out Thor on the planet, and yeah, he kind of plays the character he's played in a few of his other films, and it is the most kind of Waititi character in the movie and the most Waititian scene, if that is a word, Waititian. But he playing his kind of very droll, deadpan character that it kind of plays against type. You see this big rock monster with this kind of very flat New Zealand accent, and it's that bathos. It kind of punches the balloon in a good way. Like, it punches the balloon. It could be ridiculous, but with those kind of by laughing at itself, it works. I mean, I remember a line from Adrian Lyne, the film director who made Fatal Attraction, and on the interview he says about how if you don't give the audience something to laugh at, they'll laugh at you. They want to laugh and release nervous energy. So that's you should have humour in your movie. I just think sometimes with this one, it's kind of close to what a Will Ferrell comic book movie would be, and a lot of people really seem to really respond to that and really love the way that it doesn't take itself too seriously, and does just kind of go along with just as fun, just like throws it all into wind and says, let's make a comic book movie. But it doesn't leave a lot of meat to chew on. And I found the same in the last couple of Marvel movies I've watched. I've watched them once, and I'm quite happy to watch them once and never again. I don't want to return to them. There was no parts of it that really kind of moved me or made me go, yeah, come on, like made me jump up in the cinema. Okay, I would never probably do that, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm British, I'm very reserved, but it kind of give me a wry smile in the cinema. But no, I think Sam Raimi, when he made the Spider-Man movies, the first trilogy with Tobey Maguire, I know that for some bizarre reason they've got a lot of people criticise those movies now, and I really don't get the criticism. They're perfect comic book movies. He perfectly balances that tone. He juggles the tone perfectly, where he manages to, they're fun comic book movies and they're quite light and breezy, but there's a dramatic storyline underneath. He does spend a lot of time with the characters and actually makes it about something, and I think that's what these Marvel movies nowadays are missing. Could it be linked to the structure of Marvel, where they basically run themselves almost like a television network, where Kevin Feige, the producer, is in charge of the story. He runs the whole show, and he brings in specific writers and directors to kind of almost like, he treats each film as if it's an episode in a TV series. So this episode is going to be Thor Ragnarok, and we don't want to change the storyline too much. We can't push it forward too much because we've got Avengers Infinity War to think about, or we don't want to impact too much on what the Guardians of the Galaxy might do in the next film. So we can't move it along too much. We've got to give people what they want. So we'll just do what we normally do, and it's a very similar kind of structure to all the other Marvel movies. It's got a different lick of paint. It's a much more colourful, more brighter colour palette and aesthetic. Again, but then that's kind of been done in Guardians of the Galaxy to kind of bring itself more to the Guardians of the Galaxy world. And they've got this kind of Waititi style deadpan humour and really go with the comedy, and that kind of does set it apart a little bit. But it's a very entertaining and fun film, but it doesn't move, it doesn't challenge, it doesn't push the characters along, whereas I think those older Marvel movies, the early first stage Marvel movies, did, and they've got more of an emotional impact, which is what made people fall in love with them in the first place. So in terms of the Marvel structure, in some ways it's good because people know what they're getting. You've got the brand formula for Marvel. They don't have the problems of DC universe, maybe, where they try and give their filmmakers too much power and they end up making completely different films that don't really gel with each other. And it's fine if everyone's on board. A lot of filmmakers have rejected Marvel because of that, and others have stayed with it. I think that's part of the reason why those first few films, the directors of those ones kind of left pretty quickly. Branagh didn't stick around very long and did Thor and went off because they obviously want to make their own kind of their own films and have a bit more of an impact on the actual product itself. So it's been a very successful formula. A lot of people really love it, really like it. They're fun films, they're very entertaining, but I think they're a bit forgettable, and they're just because they don't have much of an artistic imprint on them. I saw a tweet from a journalist when they were reviewing Thor Ragnarok saying that he was hoping that Thor Ragnarok would be a Waititi movie in the Marvel Universe, but it's a Marvel movie that just happens to be directed by Waititi, so he manages to smuggle in enough of his kind of deadpan humour, his kind of spoofing of the genres where it doesn't take itself too seriously and kind of plays up the ridiculousness of it. And there's all in there, and it's all very fun and entertaining, but the action was fairly rote and standard. I thought he might bring a bit more kind of energy to the action, but there wasn't too much of that. It could have been, the action scenes could have been directed by anyone, and the storytelling, it lacks some of the heart that's in his other films, especially Hunt for the Wilder People. I thought there might be a bit more of an emotional depth to this one, but it's not there. I don't know if that's an intentional thing, or Waititi was never really given the chance in working this Marvel framework. These films don't seem to want to get things too heavy. So yeah, overall, I'd have to say Thor is a fun movie. Thor Ragnarok's a fun movie. If you like the other Marvel movies, you're going to love this. It's very funny. There's a lot of good jokes in it. It's nice to see Mark Ruffalo get a bit more of an extended role playing Hulk. He's obviously the best cinema version of Hulk, although I do have a soft spot for Bill Bixby from the TV series. And he's a fun presence to be around. He's obviously having a good time. He usually does quite heavy, serious roles, and this gives him a chance to let loose, I think. And Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Kate Blanchett, Jeff Goldblum are all having a ball. Tessa Thompson, she's going to be a big star, I think. She was very memorable in Creed a few years ago, and I think she's going to be a big star. So they're all having a good time. You can see the actors are having a laugh, having a good time, having fun, letting loose and getting to show off a bit more comic style that they don't normally get to show off. But I just find it a bit lightweight and a bit inconsequential, and I want a bit more from the films. I think they can do more. I think they can take a leaf out of Sam Raimi's book. Make these comic book films fun and enjoyable and entertaining. You can have them comic, you can have them funny, but just give a little bit of heart underneath, a little bit of depth to it, there's a point that you're really trying to make with these films. There's room for that in these comic book movies, these mythological stories about heroes. There's something you can tap into more of a human element to the film. So that's been my review of Thor Ragnarok. If you have any comments on my review, I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me, they probably really enjoyed the film, but if you've got any other comments, stick them in the comment section below. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more of my reviews, hit subscribe. I also do a podcast with some of my colleagues, Bruce and Harry, and it's called Screaming Into the Void, where we talk about film and TV and other important issues as well. So if you have a listen to those if you get a chance. Thanks for watching, everyone.